Hello friends, today we're working on the Learn to Code 2 chapter Arrays, and we're working on the activity Randomized Lands. This activity is a lot like the last one. In fact, I suggest if you haven't looked at generating a landscape, which was our last activity, you take a look at that. We spent a lot of time actually creating a randomized land in that one, but we'll do add a little bit to that this time, but this is going to be a short video. The challenge today is to use randomization to generate a unique world. And it says, what if we want to use random values in your heights array to create a unique landscape each time you run your code? And this is essentially what we did last time. It talks a little bit about the random int function here, which generates a random integer using values that we pass in. And it looks like this right here, random int from some lower value to some upper value, and this function returns an integer that you can assign to an integer variable or constant, and the random variable will the random value will be between some starting integer and some upper bound of an integer. So what we want to do here is we're going to have a heights array that's an array of integers, and it starts out empty. And we're going to want to go through and load up that heights array by appending random integers to it. And those heights will then, in the latter part of the puzzle here, be used to decide how many blocks get stacked up on each one of our coordinates here. So remember, the coordinates have rows and columns. So the columns will go from 0 up to 7, it looks like, and rows the same way, 0 up through 7. So, okay, let's go ahead and get started on this one. We've got all coordinates here, which is all the possible coordinates in the world. So this is a long one-dimensional array of our coordinates, and then I want to create a bunch of heights that will go for all the coordinates. So I'm going to create a for loop here that says for a coordinate in all coordinates, I'm going to create a random integer in here and load it up into heights. Okay. So let's see, how could we do that? Well, I'm going to challenge myself here, and I suggest you do this. You kind of get a plan for what you want your landscape to look like. In the last video, we created a landscape that started with low elevations here and gradually got randomly bigger, so that there was a mountain range down on this end over here. And we used the rows and the coordinates to make a random height that was dependent on the rows and coordinates. And I'm going to do that again, but I'm going to challenge myself this time to make there be fairly low values down here in this corner and low values here, and maybe even sort of all along the edges, but higher values in the middle. Okay, so that's my challenge today. So one way to do this is, let's go ahead and get the row and the column out of here first. So I'm going to look at every coordinate in here, and I'm going to pluck off the row first. So let's say let row for this particular coordinate equal the coordinate dot row. Okay, and I'm going to get the column too. Maybe I'm going to make these variables. I'm deciding. Let column equals the coordinate dot col. Okay. And I'm actually going to go ahead and store these because I want to do some things with them. Yeah, let's just go ahead and say, well, we would like a random value to depend on row here. So we'll do something like this. Let random row value equal the random int from starting at 0 and going up to row. And I'm going to do the same thing for the column. Let random col value equals random int from 0 to call. Okay, and so this when row is 0, we're going to be choosing random ints between 0 and 0. When row is 1, you're going to choose a random int from 0 to 1, and so on. So when row is low, your random row value will be low value, but when row is high, it could be low or high. And same thing with random column. When the columns are low, this is going to produce something between 0, 1, or 2, but when columns are high, you could get random numbers anywhere from 0 to 7 or so. Okay? So then I'm going to go ahead and add these two things together and say something like random height is going to be equal to the random row value plus the random call value. Okay. This should be column here. Okay. So random height is going to be dependent on whatever the random row value is and the random column value. Okay, so they're always going to be low down here because random row and random column have to be small, and they're probably going to be high, or at least higher up in here, because those values can be quite a bit larger. Okay, finally, what we have to do here is go ahead and append random height to our heights array. Okay, so we do that by saying heights.append. The new element is random height. Okay, so now heights is going to have the same number of elements in it as coordinate, and they're going to be random, but slightly more, they'll generally be lower in this area and higher in this area. Okay. Okay, now in this part of it, this is again just like the last activity. What we're doing here is we're grabbing the current height from the heights array, okay, by this index value. An index starts at 0, and at the end of our for loop, it increments down here. So each time we're grabbing it at index 0, then 1, then 2, and so on. So current height is going to be the height of the it's going to be the element in the height index as we go along this this coordinates array. Then in here we can do something with this. So one thing we can do, we can say if the current height is equal to 0, we can do something interesting. And I think one thing that might be interesting to do here is to turn it into water. Okay, so the way you turn something into water is, I think you say world.remove. Yeah, remove all blocks. Let's do that. So we need to remove all the blocks at our current coordinate, which is just coordinate, because our loop here is looping through all coordinates, and at each step in our for loop, coordinate is getting assigned to the coordinate at that particular location. So coordinate, 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 so on. So let's remove all the blocks there, and then let's go ahead and right away we'll say world.place, and we'll place an item at the coordinate, and that item is an instance of water at the coordinate. Okay. Now, this is your puzzle, and you decide, do whatever you want to it. Get a plan for what you'd like to do. But I'm just going through some ideas that I had here. So we're placing water at any time the current height is equal to 0. If it's not 0, so it's probably going to be greater than 0, we're going to do a few things here. This is going to place some number of blocks depending on what the value of current height is here. And so that'll just stack up blocks in that particular location. And then they have some if statements here that do some other things. So I'm going to go ahead and comment these out right now, because I'm not going to mess with that for right now. We'll do some of that in a little bit. But just for now, let's see if this is working how we expect, that we're getting fewer blocks of land over here and even some water, and more blocks in this area over here. So I'm going to go ahead and run this faster. We might have some bugs in here that we have to fix, but it's looking good. Okay, so definitely have some water appearing over here, and the blocks do seem to be getting higher as you work your way towards this back corner. And it's definitely randomized, so that's good. Let's watch this last block fill in. All right, yeah, looking good. We should get maybe some of our biggest values back here, but not necessarily. Okay, looking good so far. This is kind of what we had last time we did this. Not bad. I like it. I'm going to modify this a little bit, and it's not doing what we want yet. So far, it's just sloping up from this area to this area. Okay, and it's also, I don't want such big mountain peaks in here. So one way we can do that is we can, in these random values here, instead of going all the way from 0 to row, which will go from 0 to 7 back here, let's cut those down, divide by 2 or something. So now we're just going to half that height. And then when we add those together, this random height should be about half that size. So I'll run that. And while I'm running that, we're going to talk about how we can get it so that it doesn't get bigger over here, but instead gets bigger as you move across and then smaller as you keep going. Okay, this is looking good here. I like these. I like this. I like this gradient of land a little bit better here. The change as you go from this side to this side. So I like that a lot better. Okay, now let's talk about this a little bit here. So right now, row is starting at 0 and going up to 7, and column is starting at 0 and going up to 7. And what I'd like it to do is maybe row go up to, say, 3 and then back down to 0, and column go back up to 3 and back down to 0, so that by the time you get back here, row and column, instead of being 7 and 7, are 0 and 0 again. Okay, that'll get the land to be more in the middle, and then it'll come back down more towards water on this end. So how can we do that? Well, looking at this right in here, we've got row set right now. I could maybe do something like, say, I don't ever want row to get any bigger than 3. So I can say something like, if row is greater than 3, then I want to do something to it. And the same thing with column here. If col is greater than 3, I want to do something to col. And, well, what do we want to do is we need to make it smaller. And we need to make it smaller in a certain way. We want this value back here to be 0, 0 again. So if we want our rows to be 0 when it's 7, if we want our column to be 0 when it's 7, well, we could do something like, say, you know, if row is greater than 3, in fact, if it's 7, we want it to be 0. So that means we need to take 7 and subtract row from it here. So let's try that. Let's say row is going to be equal to 7 minus row. So let's think this through again. If row is 4, for example, if row is 4, then we're going to reset row to be 7 minus 4, which will be 3. That's good. If row is 5, then we're going to say row is now 7 minus 5, which is 2. That's good. And if row is 7, then we're going to say row is equal to 7 minus 7, or row is 0. So that's going to be changing row to be 0 down here. That's good. So I think we'll do the same thing here for column. If column is greater than 3, then we're going to reset it and say column is going to be equal to 7 minus column. Okay, so that's sounding pretty good here. Let's give this a run through. Okay, so these numbers should get big in the middle, but then get small again as we get back towards that back corner. They're not getting too big in the middle, and that's fine, that's good, but they definitely need to get small in this back corner, and they are. Nice. Okay, this is more what I was interested in. something that had a very little bit of variability in there, but a lot more water and low areas. I wanted more of an island look to this. Let's run it again just to be sure we get a little bit of a different pattern each time. Yeah, this already looks different. So our randomization is working just fine. We should get 0, 0 back in the back left corner. Okay, looks good. Looks good. This is what I like here. Let's add some other things to this now. Maybe just one other fun thing. I'm kind of interested now what would happen. No, let's go ahead and say down in here we'll do something like, say, I want to add a character to only the high values. Okay, so here's our if statement. This says if the current height is equal to 0, we do this. Otherwise, if it's greater than 0, we do this. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and say after this, we might do something like, say, if the current height is greater than or equal to 2, 3, let's do 2. If it's greater than or equal to 2, let's put a character on top. And we need to do this after we build up our mountain, right? Don't put the character on before you build up the mountain. Wait till you built up the mountain. And if the height of the mountain is greater than 2, then we're going to put a character on some of these peaks here. So we'll say world.place an item. Well, let's just put a character up here at the current coordinate. Okay, like that. Let's try this again. That's too many characters. Oh, that's because if I said it's less than or equal to 2, that's not what we wanted. We wanted greater than or equal to. Still, it's pretty cool. Okay, let's try greater than or equal to. That was the idea we wanted. Greater than or equal to 2. That's one of those fun mistakes. This is good because we're seeing that we're getting a different landscape each time here. There we go. Good. So these are height 1. These are height 2. I don't know if we're going to get any that are higher than 2. I like this. Okay. I'm happy with this. This is pretty much how I wanted it to go. I'll try one more time. Run fastest. Just wanted to give you all a flavor for how you how you do some randomization, and especially to be able to sort of plan out what you'd like this to look like. And we're getting a different island look every time, but it still has this general feel where there's water and low areas sort of around the periphery of our landscape, and it gets generally higher as you move out. If you want a little bit more of a mountain range, then maybe take away these divide by 2s here, and you're going to get bigger values. So maybe here we would change this to be 4 or something. Only put characters on if our mountains are higher than 4. So this will give us a little more variability in our heights, which is great. So you can play around with this. That looks nice too. I like it. Same general idea. We're getting low areas over here and low areas over here, and even some around the edges. So this is good too. I like it. So just wanted to give you some ideas on how you can modify your rows and column values before you go ahead and compute random variables, and then also sort of reinforce the idea that you need to remove all blocks before you place some water. Because if you played around with this and you wanted to know how to get water, this is how you do it. So there's lots more you can do with this. So this is just sort of one of those creative activities. I urge you to go sort of think of some fun ideas, maybe put different characters at different block levels. Remember, there's different characters you can do. There's blue and there's bite, and there's other things. So go ahead and choose different characters on different elevations if you want. Just have fun with this and play around and experiment with your Swift skills. So, all right, that's it for this time. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.